Welcome to Author Showcase, part of the Write-Tukubuli Literary Virtual Festival. And today we have my good friend and mentor, former journalist and author Nicole Georges-Bennett. Hey, Nicole.
Hi, Sam. Thank you so much for having me on. And allow me to introduce your host, Sam George.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I haven't hosted in a while, so forgive me.
I know. On to be on this side of the fence, eh?
Yes. All right, so let's jump right in, Nicole. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
All right. And so before we actually begin talking about your writing, I want to ask you this about the Write-Tukubuli Literary Festival. How did that even come about in the first place? I know you're uh, one of the planners behind this initiative, which I commend you and I guess commend myself too, because full disclosure, I'm also a part of the planning committee. But I think that this is so important, especially for our Dominican writers. And as I said in the showcase you did with me, that I want to see Dominican writing be known around the world.
Mhm.
We are known for bouillon music and siwo and all of that. I want to see our literary work be also known globally. So thank you for putting this together, or helping us put this together, and giving our authors a chance to showcase themselves. Hopefully, this leads to not just recognition, but also name recognition for some, or if not all, of our writers. So I just wanted to put that out there before we get into today's author showcase.
Well, thank you, Sam. And of course, I'm just a small cog in the whole machinery that has put this together. I believe that it sort of came up organically, as in conversations with myself and you and other writers from other different groups representing Dominican writers and authors. And we were sort of lamenting that there didn't seem to be that much of an online presence for Dominican writers, a place where they could showcase their work or learn how to hone and develop their skills. So we decided, I think that the Dominica Cultural Division had done something similar in terms of a virtual literary festival, maybe last year or the year before. I thought that went really well, and commend the government for putting that together. But there didn't seem to be a follow-up festival.
Right.
So we decided that we would reach out to other writing groups and see if they were interested in collaborating and putting this together. And I reached out to Celia Sorrendo at Nature Isle Literary Festival, also to Roy Sanford at Write-Tukubuli Writers. We also reached out to Leslie at the Dominican Poetic Circle. Sam and myself represent Piton Noir, which is Dominica's sci-fi fantasy collective. And yeah, everybody was on board, and we thought that it would be great to try and pool all of our writers together, and also to encourage Dominicans who are interested in writing, the kids, the youth, to have a place where they could showcase their writing, whether they're published or not.
Yes.
Write-Tukubuli Virtual Literary Festival was born. I presented.
Yes, and so I think those are the kinds of initiatives that we need to pursue. And it doesn't matter whether you are published or whether you are unpublished. I think it'll help writers to begin that journey. And I believe earlier we talked about whether it's been too late. No, as long as you are alive, and
Yes.
even if you have challenges with your eyesight, that is still not even an excuse, because I certainly know of a certain writer who
Yeah.
this doesn't stop him. So
And of course, I want to say hi to Dr. Steinberg Henry.
yeah, I don't think so. That being said, I don't believe that there are excuses we can make anymore. And with technology, it is so much easier to do research. It's so much easier to get to do what you need to do. You no longer need to use a pen and paper.
And the platforms that exist now
Exactly.
that you can showcase the work from. So
and you can publish. There's just so many avenues and less excuses.
Yes, and
Anyway,
hopefully
we don't
all
want
of
to
that
get
will come up in the festival,
right.
because we're going to be doing workshops, we're going to be doing panel discussions, dealing with
Mhm.
timely topics like this.
Right, right. So yes, so that's why we don't want to take up too much of your the time showcasing your work. I just wanted to highlight the significance of your contribution to the festival before we get into that. So getting into
I
the author showcase, I mentioned that you are a former journalist. My first question is, given your experience as a journalist, both in print and on radio, uh, how has that influenced your writing?
So, because as a journalist, one of the first things you learn to do is to write news stories, to research, to write articles. I've worked in newspaper, magazine, radio, and television, all of which require a different tweak on your writing skill set.
Mhm.
And fiction writing for me has always been the most freeing and the most creative that I could be, because it literally is a product of what I call the Holy Spirit, and inspiration and creativity coming together. But my technical background in journalism writing helps me to keep things very focused, very structured, and research based, I should say.
Mhm.
So journalism definitely has provided me the foundation from which to launch my fiction writing career.
Okay. And so sticking with the journalism background for a moment, um, does that with that, do you prefer writing short form article style or long form novels, and why?
So because of journalism, and particularly because my Bachelor of Arts degree is in broadcast journalism. So, which I earned from what is now called the Toronto Metropolitan University. Back in my day, it was Ryerson. Um, the formats that you write for radio scripts have to be precise, and they have to be 30 seconds to a minute at most. So coming out of that tradition, I am definitely a short story writer. Novels are a real challenge for me. So when I write long form, I think they would be more classified as novelettes as versus novels. So
Mhm.
you're not going to get Stephen King The Stand, type of major works. George R. Martin's Game of Thrones series, looks like a coffee table,
Right.
when you put
Yeah.
them together. So yeah, you're not going to
Less
get
than 100,000 words. Yes.
yeah. So you're not going to get that from me. So yeah. So my
Yet. Yet.
novels tend to be hopefully context heavy, but not necessarily long in format.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, that's pretty interesting because I think everyone, looks for an author to write a full novel. But
There are novels in that they're full. I mean, hopefully, they begin at the beginning and they end at the ending, and there's a
right.
climax. All of the other elements that a novel should have. It's just that mine are like this, this.
Well,
They're
you
beach
are
reads. They're beach
right, right.
Yeah.
Right,
You're going
exactly.
on a plane, you probably finish them in the 5 hour, 6, 7 hour flight.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's actually probably a good strategy, especially nowadays. People have so so much time and yet so little time at the same time. Because technology is making it easier for us to do certain things, or we don't have to. We can automate certain things, but we still have less time to read a book. And so, yeah, you're probably right. Maybe that's the way writing and reading is going to go,
Mm.
as we go along. You are a person of faith,
Yes.
and so I want to ask you how do you balance writing, say, on a faith-based theme and writing sci-fi fantasy? Do you see them as naturally or a natural connection between them?
That's a good question. Not necessarily. From my perspective, there isn't necessarily a natural connection, but it is just that whatever I write, whichever genre I choose to write in, is informed by my faith. So I have written in different genres. I don't just write in sci-fi fantasy. It is my preferred genre, but I've also done murder mysteries. I've done one book of poetry. I've done a children's book. I've written romance. So I've written, I've pretty much explored as many genres as I could. My faith informs my decisions in terms of my character growth and development. I have lots of themes of redemption, um, rejuvenation, themes of forgiveness. So those faith based decisions that I make in my novels are because of ultimately God's love for mankind and how that filters through my life.
Mhm.
So it does go through, I guess, by osmosis, goes into my novels, regardless of whether the setting is a planet, a colony.
Mhm.
What you call those things? A colony, that's set on Mars, or if it's set on a small island like Dominica, or in a work environment. Um, there's not necessarily, I think, a natural connection between faith, except in Christian writing and Christian novels, with
Mhm.
the other genres. But definitely, faith can inform the decisions you make as an author when you're writing in these other genres.
Right, right. Okay. Yeah.
That was a long answer to a very short
No, no,
question.
no. That's perfectly fine. I think it's great. I think that, I mean, you have to get the chance to explain what you're trying to say,
Thank
because
you. Thank you.
we don't want to be out of context. But definitely, that's very good. That's a very good way of putting it. And I think it's also encouraging to other writers of faith
Hmm.
not to be too stringent on themselves and think that just because you're a person of faith, which I am also,
Right.
doesn't mean you cannot write outside. You don't have to write Christian content only. You can write a sci-fi novel. You can write, and as long as I always believe that what you do is always about the motive, what it is you are trying to accomplish.
But
Right?
what if I have a question for you? What if you're dealing with a character who is a villain or a criminal, and perhaps the things that they're doing are very much against your faith beliefs? How do you then deal with a character who, for example, maybe uses profanity,
Mhm.
or or there's or does something that's graphically violent? How do you deal with satisfying your requirements as a Christian um, when you're writing somebody who's very anti-Christian?
Right. I think that that's a very good question. Yeah, and I appreciate it. Um, so I think that if a writer is writing about a character that is doing something out, just
Yes.
I don't believe, unless that is you, I don't think it should hurt you, but or hurt your faith or damage your faith, because you are saying what someone else is doing.
Okay.
Um, because not only that, if you are writing that particular character with the eyes of of our Savior Jesus, then you are not necessarily focusing on what they're doing, but the end. Is there redemption in the end? And are you trying to say that? Because let's face it, none of us as human beings are perfect. We
Mhm.
are all flawed, we've all sinned and come short of the glory of God. And we will continue to do so until Christ returns.
Right.
So, and there are many people, many of us who will do things that most people will consider evil. But that doesn't mean that there is no redemption, because the Lord says that just come as you are. Doesn't matter what you've done. And as the word says, there's only one. Christ said there's only one sin that's unforgivable. So I don't believe, and I may be wrong. And since I'm not a theologian or I didn't go to Bible school or any of that, I may be wrong, but I don't believe writing a character that's doing wickedness, which men do, which we do as human beings. I don't believe that that should affect you. It may hurt your witness a little bit, because some people might say, "Oh well, he's a Christian, or he's a pastor, or he's whatever. Why is he writing that way? Why is he writing some graphic things?" And I would say, yes, you have to be careful. You have to try to keep your words to a certain way. Like, I wouldn't write profanity,
Hmm.
or at least not overt profanity. I wouldn't do that, but certain people will,
Yeah.
because you don't want people to miss the message. I guess ultimately is what if whatever it is you're doing will glorify the Lord. I think that's what it really boils down to. It took me a long way to come to that, but I think that's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so let's continue with you for a moment. You mentioned a couple of titles that you've written. You mentioned your children's book. That is a faith-based book. So tell us a little bit about that.
So, Terry the Bunny, We Don't Believe in the Same Things, is the last work that I've produced. I tend to have about 4 or 5 projects on the go at the same time, but this one I really felt a resonance with and a connection to, because it was based off of sort of a real life circumstance. So, Terry the Bunny is about a little bunny who lives in Sunshine Village in the Caribbean, and he and his best friend Purple Turtle, Dominicans will know where I'm talking about, have a fight when they discover that they don't have the same faith traditions or religious beliefs. And so this whole story is Terry trying to work out, can he be friends with someone who doesn't believe the same things that he does? And between his gentle guidance from his mother, Mama Mabel, and his own working things out, he comes to a solution at the end. And the gist of it is to try to teach children who live in a multicultural society how to engage with their friends and with people of other faiths in a way that is respectful of the other person's beliefs, but still holding true to your own. And that was really important for me as a parent, raising children in Toronto in a very multicultural, multi faith environment and society, and running up against fellow students who didn't believe what they believed, and in teachers who didn't believe what they did, and principals who didn't believe what they believed, and how they could, with respect, explain their beliefs and hold true and strong to their faith traditions that we and my husband had taught them, while providing the other person with the space to explain their side of things and what their perspectives were. So, all of that to say, it is, I think, a very important lesson, but couched in this very cute, charming story for kids.
Right. Well, I mean, who doesn't love a bunny, right? Yeah. So I see you how you're wearing your Dominican hero or
That's right. It's
heroine.
a
Is it
Super Dominica. I've got
Super
to give a shout
Dominica?
out to Albert Pierre, who is the illustrator and the creative
Okay.
mind and genius behind this T-shirt. I also have to say that I have had this T-shirt for about 10 years, and as
Mm.
you can see, the colors are still. I'm going to give you a little. Colors are still very bright.
Wow.
So great
That
quality,
that
Albert,
speaks to
and thank you for the.
the quality of the work, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, and I mean, I
Another
feel.
Dominican, skilled Dominican, right? Um, yeah. So wearing your T-shirt, obviously, and we've mentioned you are Dominican, but how does that? How does being Dominican or growing up in Dominica, how does that influence your writing, especially when you're writing fiction or when you're writing science fiction, fantasy? How does that play?
Well, Caribbean people have a funny way of describing their islands as not a real place because there's so many things that occur on islands that seem outrageous to the rest of the world that you almost feel like you're already living in a fantasy world.
Planet
Um,
Dominica, right?
when you come out of the islands and you live in North America or in Europe, and you think back to wow, I left fertile, lush green mountains with fruits on every tree, beaches and rivers, and culture that is full and vibrant. And you almost start to you romanticize the
Mhm.
island to the point where it becomes almost like it was a fantasy, like we lived in a fantasy. Of course, when we were living there, we didn't see that. We see the guay and the hard work. But um, I think that it is, I've been living out of Dominica for many years, but I'm very much Dominican to the bone, to steal a
Mhm.
phrase from the Trinis. And it infiltrates my work in ways that I don't even expect. So I will, when I'm writing, somewhere along the line, a character may end up picking a mango, or
Well, that's not
a lit-
unexpected.
yeah, or a little patois or a Creole might come out,
Right.
or I would say even my science fiction, because I have one sci-fi novel that's been on the burner for the last 25 years,
Mm.
but it's based off of the idea of black people escaping a form of colonialism and racism. So they're leaving Earth
Right.
because of the racism and the oppressive systems, entrenched racism and institutionalized racism that they faced on Earth, and they're trying to escape to um, their own planet. Taking along the tenets and the how should I say the principles of Marcus Garvey.
Mm.
That the black
Yeah.
man should have his own land, he should have his own businesses, his own empire. So
Wow.
I think as a Caribbean person and as a Dominican person, everything that I write somehow becomes instilled with my Dominicanness
Mhm.
in small ways, in minute ways, maybe even in the way I turn a phrase or I write my sentences. It's probably a result of my Caribbean British upbringing. So,
Right.
yeah, so it is in everything I think that I write. Yeah. So, in some way or form.
Hmm. Awesome. In your writing process, how do you balance world building and character development, especially in genres that like um, sci-fi fantasy that require uh, extensive world building? How do you?
Balance the two.
Yes.
So, I think it's what we do in every form of writing. Our characters are shaped and influenced by their environment.
Hmm.
World building is no different, as I said, putting Black people on a colony in space is perhaps the same as taking a Caribbean immigrant and dropping them in New York.
Mm.
They where they have come from will shape them. What their goals and their expectations of the future are will shape them, and their present circumstances will shape them. So you have character development that is built off of the world they came from, the world they want to go to, and the world that they're in
Mm.
right now.
Okay.
They are intricately linked,
Mm.
and there is to go back to your question, one is dependent on the other. The character development is dependent on the world building,
Mm.
and sometimes that's even a physical manifestation, because I think Dune by Frank Herbert, very popular novel. It was the first sci-fi novel I ever read. It changed my life. um, Dune on planet Arrakis. I hope I'm saying that right. The Fremen are shaped by the spice of the world. It changes the color of their eyes,
Mhm.
the way that they breathe, the way that their culture is built and operates, their hierarchy in terms of ruling, their leadership, their philosophy on life is all shaped by the planet and the severe and hard conditions of the planet. And when the protagonist, who is Paul, is introduced into this world, he too goes through character development and change because of the physical environment of the planet as well as the cultural shock.
Right.
So, as I said, they're physical changes that take place in characters, that is based off the environment that they're introduced to. And then there's emotional development that takes place as a result of the different things that happen to them along the
Mhm.
way. So the ideal thing is that your character should not be the same person at the beginning of the novel as he was in the beginning of the novel. At the end of the novel, there should be some sort of trajectory of growth in some way. Sometimes it's towards being a more positive person, positive developments, and sometimes it's towards the negative.
Mm.
It all depends.
This is great because this actually sort of took up part of the next question I had in mind, but this speaks to real life as well, right? Because we are all changed somehow the older we get. So that makes perfect sense.
I'm glad.
you know, because the next question I had in mind was, how do you not lose the human touch? But clearly, you keep that going, and you know, in terms
Uh,
of yeah.
well, yeah. The emotional life of your character will always keep them human, as long
Mhm.
as you remember that this is not a one-dimensional character that you're writing. That this is someone who has hopes, dreams, flaws, failures, triumphs. Even your antagonist, and I think
Yeah.
especially your antagonist. I know that one of the things I'm struggling right now with my sci-fi epic, and why it's been on the shelf for 25 years, is because my antagonist still feels very one-dimensional to me,
Hmm.
and that's not a human. That's a character. That's a
Right.
cartoon.
Right.
So, writers, remember your antagonist should also have an emotional life. It may
Yeah.
be that their principles or their perspective is off morally, but they too have flaws, triumphs, goals, challenges, so
Yeah.
uh yeah.
Very correct. Very correct. I think the antagonist requires a lot more work than the
Yeah.
protagonist, in
Yeah.
terms of the character.
Yeah. And I enjoy
Because
writing antagonists. I do
yeah,
like a
because
good
they have to they really drive the narrative, right?
they certainly drive the
It's really
protagonist.
a villain that
Yeah.
makes it's a success, right?
I think it's funny because when we think of Star Wars, you might not necessarily think of Luke Skywalker first,
you
or Ben,
know,
or Obi-Wan Kenobi.
yeah,
Did I say that right? I'm not sure.
yeah,
Or Princess Leia. Who do we all know? Darth Vader.
exactly.
Right.
And
So,
which always it's always baffled me that just to jump off for a little bit, the way Star Wars is done, I think it's a little, I don't know if it's strange, but
mhm.
I find it a bit odd that, on one hand they say that what they call them, the ones, the lightsaber people,
The
what are they
Jedi.
called? The
The Jedi.
Jedi are
Sam.
one with the Force. I just lost their name for a second there. The four, they are one with the Force, and they are, they're the good guys, but yet they failed to see who the real villain was.
Um,
I, some,
no. No, 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 no. I would have to disagree with you there because the real villain hid his intentions and skillfully so, and hid behind Vader, right?
yeah,
So the real villain, in case anybody has not seen Star Wars, I don't know how that's possible, but just in case, yeah, the real villain hides behind Vader.
well,
Vader,
yeah, that is true. No, I get that. I get
yeah.
that.
So, and I mean, and Vader himself did not start off as a villain. So by the time
Exactly.
he evolved, his character development
Right.
took him down that path. There were people who already had invested their trust in him as an up and coming Jedi and all of that,
Yeah.
right? So they look to him as a sort of light.
Right.
You can't always, and I'm sure you probably find that in your own life, you can't always see the the degradation that's happening inside of a person, which
Well, that is true.
unfortunately, by the time it comes out, it may be even too late to help them, and then you're dealing with a different kind of
Well,
situation.
that is true, I guess. And
So
even if you may have a villain in your life and you don't even know it
yeah, I
until
mean, within families, even you have people who are. I mean, I've had friends who say sometimes on Facebook, like I did everything for this
unfortunately.
person,
Yeah.
I took care of their kids, I sent them money and all this kind of thing, and and they turn around and bad talk to me, and I can't believe it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. So yeah, I guess you're right. I never looked at it that way. I just looked at it
that
as
show, I think, has kind of lost its way with all of
yeah,
the prequels
I
and
don't know.
sequels and all
It's
of that stuff.
I
But
just think
I
that
like the original three.
I
Um,
just think that because they were so much one with the force that they should have been able to tell something, you know. But
yeah, I mean, you might have shown a plot hole right there. So
yeah. Anyway, let's get back to you. Um, you don't want to get too far past that. Uh, so we've discussed character believability is important. It's important to you, and it should be important to writers as well, even if you are writing fiction. Um, so, do you draw any parallels between the investigative skills that you used as a journalist and how you research or develop a plot or plots for your fiction writing?
So I would have to say no. I am what you call a pantser. So there's in writing there's plotters and pantsers. So pantsers are
Right.
people who they fly by the seat of their pants. So
Yeah.
I have technically only done research for maybe one or two projects. Most of my books are just out of my imagination and just sort of following a storyline very organically. Ladder of the Gods, which is one of my murder mysteries, is probably the most researched book that I've done. And that was because I was dealing with a culture that I wasn't familiar with,
Mhm.
which was Dutch Caribbean. So I decided to do a bit of research. And even my research for that is very superficial. I mean, I don't delve very deeply into the culture, but I knew that I didn't know anything about them and I wanted to find out a little bit about the colonial background and history of the Dutch Caribbean. So, and I incorporated bits and pieces of my research into the book. But that's the only one I can say that I've actively researched. Everything else is just sort of me just being very free flow, free form, and
Yeah.
organic with the
Yeah.
imagination.
Although I will say that even if you're a pantser, you sometimes still have to research, especially if you're writing something that's outside of your
Most
skill.
definitely,
Which,
yeah.
yeah, which that is me as well. I mean, when I begin, I get the idea, and then the story writing itself,
Yeah.
I have nothing to do with it. It just so don't blame me
Okay.
when you read my work. Don't blame me. It's not me. It's the story that writes itself. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
But yeah, so how, and we've talked about your faith and a little bit about morality and so on. But how in your themes of morality, hope, you mentioned redemption, the plays um, is important. How do you make your readers see that in say a sci-fi novel?
Okay.
Yeah.
I do not necessarily. Okay, the one thing I try not to do is to beat them over the head with my faith.
Mm.
I am not here to shove my Bible into the work that I'm giving to you. Um, I think that it seeps into the work through character development and who the characters are and how they grow as people. I think I also tend to deal a lot with themes of redemption. That really seems to be um, a theme that runs through a lot of my work organically, I might add. I don't sit down with the thought that I'm going to write this story about a man who does something bad. And at the end, he comes to Christ. He has a conversion experience. My work starts very much with the seed of an idea. It's like this man walks into a bank and he makes a decision that he that his mother is dying and needs medical aid and he needs this money, so he's going to rob the bank. Now the story arc may take him through to a position where he realizes that what he has done is wrong, illegal and morally, and that he needs to turn himself in and maybe even serve his time. And during his time in prison, he may then realize that he needs God and he needs to change his life and all of that sort of stuff. But um, it happens very very much as part of the story process, and it is not something that I necessarily sit down and think about. So sometimes what will happen is I will write a story and I will think to myself, I'm not sure what my message is in this story. I don't know what my themes are coming out of this story. And if you can't do that, if you write a story and you don't know what it is you are trying to tell your reader, you have a problem. So you need to know that when you're writing your story, that it is not just about point A to B to C to D. There has to be a foundation, a message, a theme that you're
Mhm.
trying to get across to your reader. And
Like a moral of the story kind of thing.
something to that effect.
Mm.
When I think where we tend to get overboard with that is when we write for kids. And what I've discovered during this process is that children don't want to be moralized. They
Right.
don't want it to be, they don't want their storybooks to be another textbook or another Sunday school, storybook. They want to be invested in a character. They want to feel what that character is feeling. They want to root or support that character, and they want to see that character achieve their goals at the end of the story. The last thing they need to hear is "Thou shalt not."
Yeah.
So, and I try not to do that in my work. I think it should be obvious that if a character makes an immoral decision or a bad decision, there will be a consequence for that. But at the same time, there could also be a redemptive arc for that person, and it flows naturally with the story. It doesn't feel forced, and it doesn't feel um, unnatural. It doesn't feel like it doesn't belong in the story. So
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Certainly. Looking at the world we are in today, and being an author or writer, whichever would you prefer, where do you see your writing going? The advent and the explosion.
of it.
And I want to explain my question. That's why I'm taking this time. The
Sure.
explosion of AI, or artificial intelligence, when it comes to writing. And I know a lot of writers, authors are very frightened, are
Mm.
very concerned about this. And so, does that affect you personally, or do you think it will affect you? How do you see it affecting your own writing?
I think that the authors and who are scared of the proliferation of AI have cause to be concerned.
We should be
I,
scared.
I wouldn't say scared, I say concerned. And the reason I
Mm.
say concerned is because having taken a look at ChatGPT myself for other projects, you can literally have ChatGPT write you a book. And you're talking about within what, a minute or two. Now, as an author who, you struggle to come up with ideas, you struggle to figure out what your characters should say, who they should be, what is the plot, there's a lot that goes into writing that
Mhm.
takes a long time, years in some cases.
Right.
Now you have this tool that can basically, in theory, do what you do in a matter of minutes. Yeah, it is very concerning. It makes you wonder, is there going to be a market for your book? But that said, I think that there is. I think that there's room for both. I think if you look at an AI produced story, to me, I feel I can tell the difference. I
Hmm.
don't think the technology is quite there yet to create masterpieces in novel writing.
Right.
I think it's still very basic, and I think you can spot errors. Whether it's grammatical or otherwise, you can spot errors. They don't take the time. The AI doesn't take the time to character build.
Mhm.
It doesn't necessarily give you settings and show you the relationship between the characters and the settings. It will give you a setting, and it will tell you what the character is doing in the setting, but not necessarily how the character is impacted by the setting.
Right.
That's something a human writer can do.
Exactly.
So we're not exactly going to be replaced. And I don't want to preempt the panel discussion, but my opinion is we're not there yet where we need to be running around screaming bloody murder because
Right.
AI can write. Um, in my work, what I use AI for is to create images that illustrate my work,
Mhm.
because I do sort of I do audio video versions of my stories for my YouTube channel. That's
Right.
how I'm trying to differentiate myself in the marketplace. So I use Leonardo AI and these sort of things. I have played around with ChatGPT and sort of asking it, um, how would you resolve this character's dilemma? And
Mhm.
I've looked at the solutions it's presented with me, and they're fine. It doesn't feel right to me to incorporate that into my work. So I'll use ChatGPT to create maybe a query letter
Mhm.
or an invitation to a book launch.
Mhm.
I do not use it for writing my stories. It does not work for me in that way. Um,
Yeah.
Even asking it to come up with ideas for something that I'm struggling with, it might, very rarely have I ever been able to use something that is brought up to me. It still doesn't know my brain and how my mind works. So it can't really put me on the track that I, Nicole Georges-Bennett, need to go on.
Mhm.
So if you're a beginning writer and you're maybe struggling with inspiration and you're like, okay, I would like to write a story. I don't know exactly what it is I want to write about. ChatGPT can give you like 10 ideas.
Right.
But I would not then say ask ChatGPT to write the story. That to me is cheating. That's cheating.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again,
That's
that's my
yeah.
personal. Now, I know that there are people who have written whole books using AI, or and I heard this very weird one. I thought was very creepy, where you clone yourself, and maybe you would know the technical
Mhm.
things of this. You clone yourself, and then you have that write the book for you because it knows how your mind works because it's a clone of you. I'm not even sure the technical software how that is, but I actually
Yeah.
heard somebody advocating this on to their listeners, their viewers on a
Mm.
podcast.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
I haven't actually heard that particular one where you can clone yourself and have your clone write for you.
yeah,
It's digital, but
yeah.
that to me, that's probably even more frightening than
So yeah, so I'm
somebody.
way too old school for that.
I know, right? And I think that maybe upbringing, moral character, and upbringing, I think those are the things that make the difference in people who would use AI as a research tool and versus those who would use it as their writer or as their ghostwriter. And I don't, as you rightly say, the those AI tools are not have not developed to the point where they can actually be a ghostwriter.
Mm,
They're just tools to
yeah,
assist with
exactly.
what you already have in your head or your mind or what you want to do. But they can't replace the human being. Even if you can use them to do complex things like sing a song,
Yeah.
I think that's okay. But as long as the words are yours,
Hmm.
it's not an issue. I personally do not have any problem with AI per se. Well, I shouldn't say I don't have any problem. I I have no issue with using it as a tool. However, I have concerns of how some people will choose to apply this tool
Mm,
because it will affect how it affects uh, the rest of us. Like you say, the folks who've used AI to publish whole books or write whole books.
yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine those books being really good anyway. And as like you, I would be able to spot it almost instantly, uh, both because of my technical background and as a writer. I can tell if a human being wrote something or if just because, for one thing, the errors would be different. So I just think we have to watch out for that kind of thing and make sure that we don't cross the line
Mm,
when we decide to use um, AI as a tool in whatever we do. Right?
yes.
Anything else you would like to add that we didn't get to touch on? I think we are coming close to the end of today's author showcase, so I wanted to give you an opportunity to bring up anything that I didn't get to ask you or I forgot to ask you about, or you'd like to.
I think we've covered quite a lot. I'd just like to let everybody know that my books are available on Amazon.com. Most of them are also available as ebooks in Kindle, and I've got some audiobooks coming out as well, and they will be on Audible, I believe, .ca. Okay, so well, for Audible, it would be Ladder of the Gods and Come Night.
Right.
So those two are available as Audible. So Ladder of the Gods is a murder mystery set in pseudo Dutch Caribbean island, and Come Night is my teen or YA vampire novel. So
All
it was
right.
one of my favorites to write. So
Yes, yes. All right. So thank you. Excellent. All right. That's it, folks. Thank you once again for joining us on Author Showcase, part of the Write-Tukubuli Literary Virtual Festival. We are so glad you were able to join us, and we hope to see you on the next one.